right, from Austin, Texas to Ringe, New Hampshire today. This is the Slipstream Podcast. My name is Andrew Dalton. I'm your host. With me today is a substitute. I've got a substitute for my man James Lingfield. We've got Josh Randall, or Hotspot as he's known in the Midwest F1 League, where he commentates, does an incredible job, even throws like radio chatter into the races. So I get to watch myself try to race like afterwards. Like, I'm a driver in that league, and it's fun to get the race afterwards, stream it, and then like watch yourself be like, where can I improve, or blah blah, watch the whole thing, get some context for everything. But the cool thing is you're really good at commentating, and also you throw the radio of all the drivers in at the same time, so you're just like watching an alternate reality F1 race with just
where it's actually professional and it's actually got some budget into it. That's one of the beauties about pre-recording stuff, is you get to throw everything in after and actually have fun with it. And I mean, I'd like to do that live one day. It sounds like a budget I don't have though. So
live with, I mean, I guess we're just as talented as the regular driver. I mean, if I was to say, me and Charles Leclerc, he's right here, I'd be like right here, obviously, as a solid midfielder in Division 2 of this league, definitely just right up there.
Easily.
Thanks for joining me today, man. We've got let me see if I can pronounce this. Hold on. This is one of the most delicious sounding race names I've ever heard in my entire life. The Grand Premio. Wait, hold on. I'm like reading off the 2021. Let's read the 2021 one here. Formula One Pirelli Gran Premio del Made in Italy L di Emilia Romagna 2021 Grand Prix. Did I
just call it Imola, so that sounds good to me. I don't think I've
Oh man, I think they were sitting around. They're like, "What are we going to call this race?" And then they're like, "I don't know. Why don't we just name it something that sounds like the most delicious pasta dish?"
How much could we make this race stand out before the race actually starts?
How much can we make this race sound like a destination for the second installment of Diane Lane's Under the Tuscan Sun? Okay, how can we do that? Oh man, it's a pretty the first two races of this year might be a little bit more action packed than every race last season, if I can be so bold to say.
Easily.
And you come away each of these races the last few weeks, you come away with this crazy feeling that like we're gonna see a lot of really cool stuff this year, and a lot of really good competition. Of course, you've got Hamilton and Verstappen up front, the first two. That's a story in its own, and we're probably going to see that play out over the rest of the season. But what's more interesting to me, Josh, is our 3, 4, and 5 of the top 5, which is Lando Norris with his second podium. And then you got Leclerc and Sainz 4th and 5th in Ferrari. My question to you right off the bat, is Ferrari back? Do we have Ferrari again? Are we...
I tell you what, at the moment, they're looking like a very consistent team. We've seen that a couple times already. I think as soon as we saw Carlos Sainz jump into the car, we saw a mega improvement from Ferrari. It looked like they had their gusto back they've had in seasons previous. So we didn't see that with Vettel for the past, 2 seasons now. We haven't seen that. And I think it's really good to see from a neutral's perspective to see, okay, these guys can finally start to get back into this fight. They're not quite there yet.
Yeah,
they still have a lot of work to do, as does, especially with the new rules package coming next year, the new everything coming next season. So, they can get it all together now, but I think their mindset is probably on the future more than it is right now, for sure.
Yeah, Sebastian Vettel last 2 seasons was like a cow out to pasture. Like it just seemed like it was very much just like, well, I don't know, racing is cool, but also I have my organic farming. So maybe it doesn't matter what happens at all. And so they're probably a little relieved to get a driver in there that wants to be there, I guess, is a little younger, not a little, probably significantly younger in terms of racing age, and like wants to be there. And not only that, it seems to be one of the drivers that have made the switches from 2020 to come into his seat and feel more comfortable in his car than, say, Daniel Ricciardo does in a McLaren, or maybe even a Fernando Alonso does in his Alpine, arguably. And he just seems to have a little bit more of the fire And this season, especially, even though we're only 2 in, seems to be a case where the young kids are really kind of getting it over on the veterans, except for maybe Hamilton, of course.
It easily. I mean, these young kids have something to prove, don't they? I mean, we've seen. We saw. I think this probably. You could throw it back to Russell last season at Sakir when he was in the Mercedes. You could throw it to then when he is making these overtakes on Valtteri Bottas and stuff like that, and he's almost getting in the top 10 in the worst car on the grid. And then obviously you can throw it back even further to Lando Norris in Austria with his first podium. I mean, the young guys are coming alive, and I think they see this as an opportunity. As you know, Lewis Hamilton's future has been uncertain for the past 2 seasons or thereabout. We don't really know what he's going to do past his contract. We don't know if he's going to sign a new one. We don't know if he's going to come back. So these new guys are looking at this like, this is the perfect time to strike. This is to plant myself in the position to where I am the face of the league after Hamilton goes. And I think that's been translating a lot, even into this season already. It's been mega. It's been a big impact.
Yeah, I think so. They just seem to be, I don't know what it is, but, you know, Alonso's got he's got an all right car under him. He seems like he's a little behind, even though he's only been out for 2 years. And it seems like that 2 years may be more like 10 in terms of going up against these younger kids. I see a future champion in Charles Leclerc. I think if Ferrari puts a good car under him, just like Honda did with Verstappen this year, we've got him in the mix. I mean, if he's probably 4 or 5 more podiums this year than he did last year. But it was surprising. For some reason, I was just so unexpectant of Ferrari that when I looked up the results, like it didn't even register for me when I watched the race. Like I had to pull up the results a few days later, and then I was like, oh, like I pulled the results up yesterday. I was like, oh, they're 4th and 5th. They're right there. And Leclerc was 5th last year. But you didn't see the second Ferrari car anywhere near the top last year at Imola.
Well, I can't blame you with how many times Carlos Sainz went into the gravel after that. I can't blame you for thinking that, if I'm completely honest. But it surprised me a little bit as well, if I'm honest. Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason, I just saw him he was just in the gravel the whole day. And I was just like, oh, well, he was, relegated, I guess, at some point. And then I pulled up the results. I was like, wait. I don't know. It's weird. The perception's weird because you're so focused on the top 3. You're just like, oh, wait, who was 5th? Oh, he's right there. He wasn't even that far off. He was 2 seconds off.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest beefs with F1 broadcasts is that they only really show the top 3 in the race. Like I remember in the broadcast, I think it was Stroll was making a move on somebody in the race, and Crofty goes, oh yeah, and Lance Stroll's just overtaken. Like, you're not going to show us that. That upset me so much more than it probably should have, because all they show the whole time is Verstappen in front with nobody around him.
Yeah, show the great cars. Come on, What are you doing? But yes, I mean, Sainz wasn't even that far behind Leclerc. It's 2 seconds. Ricciardo, on the other hand, coming in at 51 seconds behind Verstappen, where Norris was 23. So I guess a 28 or so second difference there, if my math is correct, which it usually isn't. So somewhere around 28 seconds. Did he have an extra pit stop in there? What was the deal with his time? Because Norris got out in front of him there after they made that switch where he just wanted to get into clean air and just took off.
No, it was completely obvious that Norris had the better car. I mean, you could see it ever since the beginning of the race, and you could tell that Ricciardo was holding him up as well. I don't really know what to tell you on that front. I mean, it didn't really seem like Ricciardo had a bad car. He still finished 6th. That's a pretty solid result, especially being new to this team, being 2 races in with this brand new team. And so some people could look at this result and say, well, Lando Norris could be getting the better of Daniel Ricciardo here. You could say that. But from my perspective, what I'm going to say is McLaren is suddenly looking like the most consistent car on the grid, because we had the problems last week for the Red Bulls. We had Sergio Perez, whatever happened to him on the formation lap. So we had a problem there. This week we had obviously Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas, that whole shenanigans that was happening there. Meanwhile, the McLaren guys have just stayed ultra consistent, and it was kind of like that last year as well. And if they could keep building on that, that'd be mega to see. And honestly, that's one of my predictions is McLaren's going to be right up there with him at some point. It's not there yet, so. But
and if we see something like what happened in Monza last year, where something happens to Verstappen, something happens to Hamilton, then you're looking at Sergio Perez or one of the McLarens taking a victory at some point, which is very possible. I mean, you never know what's going to happen with these races. One of the biggest takeaways with this sport in general is that, you see these recovery drives all the time where it's easy for one of these drivers to give up at lap 20, but they don't, and somehow they're right up there top 5, or in Sergio Perez's case, he wins a race like in Sakir. So I think it's very possible to see McLaren actually take a victory this year for the first time in 8 years, something like that.
I really hope so.
Yeah,
honestly.
When was the last McLaren victory? That was
surely it wasn't when Hamilton was driving for them.
Yeah,
it was. It feels like forever, doesn't it?
Yeah,
there was a couple of years. I forgot which season it was. It was probably 2017, 2018, where they were right at the bottom of the constructor standings, and everybody thought, McLaren might be done now, and now they're coming back. But that whole 2 seasons felt like 5. So I mean, I can't even tell you off the top of my head when their last one was.
For dramatic sake, we're going to say the last victory was with Ayrton Senna. Sure. In 1988. Yeah, okay. That's that. We're going to go with that. That's what it feels like. Just act like the whole last 30 years didn't exist. The last victory was Ayrton Senna at Monaco in 1988, and that's the way it is. But yeah, man, it's cool to see Lando with the second podium. I feel like he's grown up a lot since last year, especially this weekend with qualifying, being down in 7th place and barely, which is, man, you're just gutted when you're like, oh man, you just see him go off the track by a centimeter or two and his whole time's deleted. Mm. And he just, no one was harder on himself this weekend than he was. And I don't know if that's a thing you would have seen from him last year. And I think that shows a lot of maturity on his part. And then also, I think it's very promising. I think I don't think this is the last podium we're going to see Norris on this year. Absolutely not. I mean, it looks like he's got the confidence now. I mean, obviously he had the podium in Austria, but even still then there was questions about Lando Norris. You can't say that there wasn't. His rookie season and then into last season, there were still questions on, okay, does this guy actually have the solid ability to drive and get on podiums? We're 2 races into the season. Lando Norris is getting on the podium and he's putting in consistent results. Hopefully a trend that continues. And it just seems like he's matured greatly. Part of that could be due to Ricardo stepping in there and actually being the father figure to him. I don't want to say that, but that's kind of what it appears like. Your father figure. That's what it seems like, because Ricardo's been in the sport for near 10 years now, something like that, hasn't it? And Lando just hasn't had that guidance up until now, and I think he's really going to benefit off that. Yeah, I think more Ricardo's definitely more like an uncle. Oh yeah. And whereas Sainz was just like a big brother, Oh yeah. So maybe it's forcing his hand a little bit, but he just seems more aggressive, man. He just seems like more confident. He seems like he's comfortable in that car. I mean, it is his 3rd season with the team, but I saw a spark in him this weekend that I don't know if I saw definitely not in 2019 and certainly not, just in bursts in 2020. And this year, it's looking like if he can keep that up, man, he's right up there too. That's the thing about the young guns. It's like these kids are their own rat pack, and all the grandpas are back there with their organic farming. And of course, Alonso is just zen, all the time. So it looks like it's looking like a thing where there's this gap between the super young drivers and the super old ones. It's just kind of interesting to me. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you could tell there was in the back of my mind. I don't know if you saw the tweets between Norris and Lewis Hamilton over the weekend after Norris's time got deleted, but I think after that, Lando Norris just really sat down and said, okay, well, I've got the talent now. If I'm getting the attention of Lewis Hamilton type thing, where I'm getting, into these positions where I can actually look competitive, look respectable, look mature enough to be a winning driver, to at least contend for. But I think once he fully realizes that, he will be one of the top drivers on the grid. Man, if he doesn't already, he just looks comfortable, and that's always a cool thing to see. Is somebody comfortable in the car, and just with anything, any sport, any sort of deal where you're having to perform, you get that that last level of confidence and comfort. Once that kind of cauterizes, you see people go kind of to a next level with performance and their results and things like that. And I guess that's where the muscle memory sets in, and you just kind of know what to expect from yourself and your opponents and stuff like that. So it's just cool to see. Another thing I thought was interesting was, and it wasn't really talked about at all, was Gasly going from, last place to up to P7, which was interesting. Another one of those results where I was just like, oh, I guess he's P7 because you see him on full wets. It's clearly not the right call. And I guess, at least if you're watching the broadcast, you kind of put him out of your mind. And then you see the result sheets and you're like, oh, he brought back from last place into 7th place, which was pretty remarkable, especially for a track like that, especially for such an unpredictable day. And that was just really, I think if Yuki hadn't spun out, he would have been in the points too. So you're seeing these really well-performing Honda cars, and especially with AlphaTauri, you're seeing a couple of guys that are capable of being in the points every single weekend. Not that that wasn't the case last year, but it just seems like they're kind of making a harder charge this year.
Yeah, that was kind of the thing I noticed because I was, after I think practice 3, we had Gasly up there, and I was like, okay, so this trend was last week as well in Bahrain. That was the trend also in winter testing that we had the AlphaTauris having these respectable cars, to say the least. And I think that honestly, I think the decision to go to full wets at the time, I was like, well, I don't really know about that. That just sounds, because the track is drying up. It's not entirely raining, but I think they saw how much. I mean, we saw Verstappen nearly lose it under safety car in the lead, going through, I think it was sector 2 or wherever it was. I think they saw that and they were like, okay, I think it might as well just be safer to go to the full wets and actually have a little bit of grip on the car. But yeah, you can't really hate this AlphaTauri team. Honestly, you just have to respect what they're doing. I mean, obviously they're they play second fiddle to Red Bull with the Honda engines and whatnot. But I tell you what, it's kind of that it's that team where you may not root for them on the outside, but you really do on the inside, because you got guys like Pierre Gasly, who has been an underdog pretty much his entire career. You've got guys like Yuki Tsunoda, who by the way, kid's got some talent. I could go on for hours about that kid. Honestly, he is absolutely. I think that kid might be something special. But you look at the AlphaTauri team and you just think, you know what, this team might actually be something for real. This might be a solid midfield defending team.
I mean, I see him as top. I mean, if they can kind of pull this consistency in week after week, I see them right up there with Ferrari, or right behind Ferrari. Assuming Ferrari keeps going on the same trajectory, and assuming AlphaTauri does, I see them right behind Ferrari as kind of like the top tier of the midfield teams.
They very well could be. Yeah, that's not far fetched whatsoever. And I think that honestly, I don't really see them, because that gap between, say, the top 3 or 4 cars and then the gap behind AlphaTauri from 6th to 10th, they're kind of in that perfect middle ground where they're not really getting challenged from anybody, at least not yet. I mean, I don't really see Aston Martin making a charge at them anytime soon this season. I don't see Alpine doing it. No. Alfa Romeo has been on a really slow start. Williams, obviously they did good at Imola last year. I don't see that trend continuing, unfortunately. The thing is, though, I do see Ferrari starting to get their mojo back. So I think AlphaTauri is going to stay right where they are in 5th, but they're going to hold on to it. It doesn't look to be any pressure from anyone else at the moment, I think. And honestly, you know what? I think if they can keep building on what they have, I know that's a little hard being kind of like the secondhand team, the secondhand Honda team, but yeah, you never know. That could be something. I think they could potentially crack that top 4 at some point.
Yeah, that'd be wild. Yuki's got a lot of talent. I think he's definitely next in line, heir apparent to another Red Bull seat ahead of Gasly for sure. I don't know if they're going to promote him again.
I would feel so bad if that didn't happen. I mean,
I don't think it is. I don't think it will. I think they're on record as saying they're not going to do it.
Well, he's going to. I don't see Gasly leaving F1. I think he's definitely my bet is he's going to replace Ocon at Alpine.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
That's my personal bet. That's what's going to happen. But like he put Pierre Gasly in a good car and actually because I'm sure he's mature enough now after his Red Bull stint 2 seasons ago. I'm sure he's mature enough now to where if you were to put him in a good car, he would actually kind of crank out results. And I think if you said that same thing about Pierre Gasly, again, when he was in the Red Bull at the time, that wasn't the case. Obviously, he was attacking it from all the wrong angles. And I mean, let's be honest, that second Red Bull seat is kind of known for doing that to drivers where they're under pressure constantly. They've got mega expectations. So I think Pierre Gasly is going to have to switch teams. I really hope he does, because he's an absolute joy to watch in this in this league. But yeah, Yuki's definitely going to take that second Red Bull seat at some point. It's probably not going to be. It's probably not going to be for about 2 seasons. I don't.
2023.
Yeah, probably. I don't see Perez doing bad enough to where Red Bull won't want to sign him. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't see him. I don't see that gap. I don't see a Verstappen and Albon gap. Mm-hmm. between Verstappen and Sergio Perez type thing. I think
no, not at all. I mean, and if anything, I see them kind of head to head. I don't think Sergio's going to pull any punches. I don't think he's playing second driver at all. I think in his mind, he has every right to this championship bout as Verstappen does. I just don't. I think Verstappen's got the head start with knowing the car better. And I think that might be the biggest factor. Sergio did say he's going to need about 5 races to get everything kind of pumping on all cylinders with his, that car being kind of an extension, because you need it once you're driving at that level. You need that car to be an extension of yourself. You step into a new seat, and he said it himself. You've got different ways to engage all the different mechanisms in the cars. You've got a different steering. Everything's different in a car like that, and especially if you're a driver at that level, you can pick out every little small detail, throttle techniques, the way the suspension handles. The chassis, all these things. I mean, especially going from a Racing Point into a Honda built car like that, it's just a completely different car. So I see him right up there. I just don't see him right up there, for another few races. But I don't think in his mind he's like, oh, I'm gonna just let Max take it. I think he's gonna be like, yeah, I just want to be the champion too. So.
Well, yeah, but I think the point to that is I think Red Bull actually have the confidence this year that they can pull out a Constructors' Championship victory.
Oh, no doubt.
Right now, they're only 7 points behind Mercedes. I mean, last year, Mercedes were miles ahead of everybody. Their idea was, okay, let's just throw all of our effort into Max Verstappen to at least get him in a position to win drivers, which didn't happen. This year, they're achieving both. You got Verstappen, who is actually, I think he's a point away from leading driver standings. Yeah. As I said already, Red Bull is 7 points behind Mercedes and Constructors. I think they actually have a valid chance of contending for that Constructors Championship this season. So
I think they're going to take it. I think they're going to take both.
Really?
Like, that's my prediction. Yeah, I think Verstappen's taking the championship this year.
Yeah, I mean that's not out of the question at all. I think Red Bull winning Constructors is a bit further behind, is a bit more far out than that. But I definitely think Verstappen's got a real chance this season for sure.
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know if it's an intuition thing. They just seem hungrier because they haven't had it in so long. And Mercedes is that team. They're like the Hawks from the Mighty Ducks. They're just like they've had it for so long. I think they're just this year they just got caught on their back foot a little bit too long. And Red Bull's got the forward momentum where Mercedes is just kind of comfortable. But I don't know, I could be wrong. That's just kind of how I perceive it. But everything looks like Honda just kind of threw everything into this engine this year.
But see, I look at that and I say, did Honda really build a better engine? Or did Mercedes backtrack enough to make it competitive? Because as we saw last season, whenever Max Verstappen was, he started on pole at Abu Dhabi, won that race by miles, right?
Right.
I think realistically, it comes down to, Honda improved, but Mercedes really kind of fell backwards a little bit, because you could see it in them. It's not that thing where it's not that thing anymore where, okay, picture this. It's 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. You turn the race on, at least 6 a.m. for me. You turn the race on and be like, it's lights out and away we go. Lewis Hamilton leads around turn 1. He goes, okay, I can go to sleep for the rest of this race. It's not that anymore. And I think it's just, I think Red Bull is just finally at that competitive state where they wanted to be. And I think it wasn't necessarily all of them putting the effort into it. I really think Mercedes dropped the ball this season.
I think
it's too early to tell, but
I don't know if they, I don't know if they dropped the ball or if they just got caught under regulations that just do not serve those low rate cars at all. I think their floor and the way that their ground effects on their car work like really screwed them over. And I think it kind of is an advantage for the high rate cars where you look at those Red Bulls and they're just, they're like sprint cars almost. Sometimes you're just like, how much clearance under those back wheels do you have? Yeah. And then it comes to 2021 and all of a sudden their rear diffuser regulations are such where Honda's like, oh, cool, this actually kind of works to our advantage a little bit. And so I think it's a combination of that. I think it's a combination of Honda being scared to go out of F1, not in the title fight at all. I think they're just really kind of, throwing all their eggs in the basket and going like, all right, well, let's try to nab one, before we actually step out of, let's go, let's do that. But yeah, man, we'll see. I think it's pretty exciting. And AlphaTauri is looking really good. Alpine, a little unforgettable. They're just there. They're just there. I don't know if I have anything really to say other than, I guess just right kind of smack dab in the middle of things, which is, it's not horrible, but it's, it's not great.
I will say, looking back on it now, you can really see how much Daniel Ricciardo was doing for that Renault Alpine team. Without a doubt, you can actually see how much he meant to that organization, because I mean, as much as I like seeing Fernando Alonso back in the sport, you could have put any other driver in that seat and it would have, for right now, they would have done just the same. As much as I like Fernando Alonso, I just think, I don't know. Alpine is just, it puzzles me, because they were making, towards the end of last season, they were making really, really good progress. They were getting Daniel Ricciardo in position to get podiums. It wasn't every race, mind you, but it was a possibility. There was a distinct possibility where you could see Ricciardo on the podium, and then eventually they did it with Ocon at was it Bahrain or Sakira? It was one of those two. But I don't see that being a possibility anymore. And you could just tell that. I mean, ever since. I mean, from watching Drive to Survive, you could see how much Cyril Abiteboul was actually put off by Ricciardo choosing to leave that team. I mean, how could you blame him? First of all,
yeah.
But you could see how much he meant to that driver program, because I think that was Renault's first time in a while where they were like, okay, we've got ourselves a driver that actually knows what he's doing a lot. No shade to Hulkenberg or anything, obviously, but we've got a driver that has won races, knows enough to win races. Knows enough to, demand, get the demands out of the car.
Yeah.
And I just don't think they have that anymore. And it really just hurts to see, because honestly, I was really expecting a good run from them this season. I don't think it's going to happen.
I think they'll maybe nab a few P5s, if they get lucky, some P4s, but I think they're just kind of going to be stuck in that purgatory of P7 to P10 the whole time. It really looks like. I think Ricciardo's, to your point, Ricciardo's presence is really understated. I think he brings a lot to any team he is operating in, just almost halfway because of his attitude alone. I mean, the guy is such an effervescent, just like positive, encouraging force that wherever he's going to be at, he's always going to have a great impact and like kind of push things forward. And yeah, I think his influence is kind of like, I think it's missed. I think definitely with Driver to Survive too. I mean, they spin a lot of their own narratives, and you kind of have to take some of it with a grain of salt. But at the same time, you could kind of tell that was really the case with him, because sometimes you watch the Drive to Survive thing, and that like they blew the DAS system thing way out of proportion, just to be like, oh, this is why Mercedes is winning, because they have this DAS system. They had like almost a whole episode about that. And you're like, okay, well, if you follow it at all, you're like, all right, well, not that big of a deal. Yeah, it's fine. Settle down. But with that, you're just like, oh yeah, he was really kind of hurt. He was like expecting this to be a more long-term project and thought he had kind of, nabbed his black horse, so to speak, or whatever the horse phrase is for that. I don't know, dark horse, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it's I think they're definitely missing him for sure. That's definitely for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of that point that there was a lot of times last season where I would like look at the driver towards the end of the season as well, where I would look at some of these drivers that were making these, going to different teams at the end of the season. Like we had Carlos Sainz with Ferrari. I bet everybody who's a Formula One fan that saw Carlos Sainz go into Ferrari next season and then seeing how Ferrari performed was like, did he just make the mistake of his life right there?
Yeah.
And I was kind of feeling the opposite of that with Ricciardo. I said, gee, Renault's putting together some solid performances. McLaren is going to have to develop everything all over again, switching to Mercedes next season. That's just, I don't know. That became a lot of uncertainty. But I mean, it was a good enough move for him, I suppose.
It was weird seeing Sainz move to that Ferrari car last year, knowing how bad they were last year and not really expecting it to improve much. For whatever reason, I was just thinking it wasn't going to improve until 2022 potentially with the new cars. And you're just like, oh, well, this is kind of going to be the case next year too. Maybe Carlos made a huge mistake. Even Lando said that, he was like, he just made a huge mistake. He's going to regret it. And it's like, wow, man. And 2 races in, you're just like, actually, I don't know. It's probably a pretty good move.
Yeah, might be okay. Yeah, I was about to say they're pretty much on level pegging with McLaren. Almost, Ferrari definitely behind, but I mean, I don't think it's not like Carlos Sainz has lost way too much ground to where he'll never recover. I think actually, in looking at it, I think that this was actually probably a decent move that he won't regret too much.
Tit for tat. I mean, it's arguably the best lineup on the grid as far as just 1 and 2. Like, it's a really
almost equal pairing on the grid,
almost completely equal. Speaking of equal, Hamilton up front had his hiccups, had his difficult moments, fought back to P2. Bottas, on the other hand, never got those tires heated up and just kind of stayed back. And it's almost not even surprising knowing his track record on a recovery drive and his ability to overtake and take on other drivers. If he's not, 10 seconds ahead in one of the Mercedes, it's kind of like his race is ruined. So I don't know if this is like a chronic thing with him where he doesn't seem to be able to, kind of claw it back like Hamilton does. What do you think about that?
I tell you what, I think honestly, Valtteri Bottas had the confidence hit of his life when they went to Sakir and saw George Russell be put into Hamilton's car, have nothing in the car fit him whatsoever, have a foot and a half above the halo or thereabouts, because George Russell obviously, much larger in size than to Lewis Hamilton, and still have George Russell drive the wheels off that car, go around Valtteri Bottas as well. And I said this as well. I said the first thing I said after that race was, okay, listen, this was in reference to the Hamilton being the GOAT debate on if it's the car, whatever that is. I said, you know what? You could look at this and say, okay, Hamilton's getting a bit of help from his car. The difference between Lewis Hamilton is he is not making any mistakes with that car whatsoever. He's got a good car on him, no doubt, but he's not making any mistakes. And I think Valtteri Bottas is just, maybe he's sick of playing second fiddle to Hamilton. Maybe he's just taken a huge confidence hit to that. And you're right as well. We saw this in Turkey last year as well. He had one of the most god-awful Formula One displays that we've seen in a long time.
He got lapped, didn't he?
He got lapped. He spun about 5 times. It was kind of ridiculous. But as soon as I saw George Russell get into that Mercedes, I said, he's going to take Valtteri Bottas' seat within 2 seasons now. I think Valtteri Bottas, he'll probably stay in F1, but he's done for Mercedes. And I really hope he can climb. I really hope that he can come back, because he's actually not a bad guy. I mean, as much as you want to hate on Valtteri Bottas, call him overrated, you can do all those things. But at the end of the day, he's not some sort of joke. He can drive a car.
Yeah. I don't know, man, who's wanting to call him overrated? Because at the same time, I'd be like, do you know what you're talking about? Like, you're talking about a guy who's been a solid number 2 to Hamilton since 2017, and he's done the job, and that's exactly the job that Mercedes has needed him to do over the last 2 years. So I question anybody that's like, he's overrated. Like, I don't know. I think you're kind of just full of shit, Yeah.
I mean, that's a valid argument when you think of it like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. I think it might also be, again, George, one of the young kids, Valtteri, one of the older guys, and just kind of like having those younger kids, for whatever reason, that pattern sticks out to me where you're just seeing these young kids get after it, and the older guys are just kind of like, whoa, this is a new crop. I think we're seeing just a new hair follicle grow in, really, to excuse the horrible metaphor, but like just seeing, we're seeing a new crop of kids come in that are just kind of, I don't know if it's the neurons firing quicker or something, but then they just seem to be quicker. Like all the kids are just like, and it's just starkly divided along age. I don't think it has ever been like that before, where it's just these kids are just a little bit quicker where it counts.
Yeah, I mean, that was never a thing in the olden days of Formula One. Olden days,
no.
Judge me for my 19-year-old age. Olden days being like the 80s and whatnot, through on that point. we never saw these young guns come into the sport and immediately put on a clinic like we're seeing some of these guys. The clinic being, finishing midfield consistently. But we've never seen these young drivers come into the sport and suddenly make an impact. That was always something that would take time. That was the case for Schumacher. That was the case for pretty much any driver that has been in the spotlight. That has been the case for that. Their youth was not full of success like we see some of these drivers are.
No, and it makes me think about why that is. I just want to know. I'm just a naturally curious person. I'm just kind of wondering why the younger kids seem to kind of have this advantage. Is it because they understand the technology more? Do they have some sort of inroads as far as the software inside these cars or something like that? I know that Carlos Sainz, particularly, he's not the youngest, but he's one of the younger guys out there. Is just as much of an engineer sometimes as he is a driver. I think it's said that he's up there. Lando too, where they're with the mechanics and they're with the engineers talking about the different aspects of the car mechanically and technically that a lot of the drivers aren't. And I just wonder if the younger guys kind of typically trend towards that, where they're kind of with the mechanics and with the engineers a little bit more. They're a little bit more data driven than the older guys.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's kind of what separates the men from the boys, really, is that having that intertwined relationship with your car, that you know exactly what it's doing, everything that's going on in the car, you can understand it as well. That really separates a lot of these guys. Because I mean, there are some drivers, like I'm pretty sure, honestly, you could say that about Vettel this season with going to Aston Martin. He just kind of gets in the car and drives it, doesn't know what to expect out of it, doesn't really understand what's happening with it. And but I mean, that's not the case with some of these younger guys, really.
Yeah, Vettel just like, oh, so Sebastian, tell us about your race. He's like, well, I drove the car. This is a horrible accent, by the way. I don't know. It's just like Italian or something. He's like, well, I drive this weekend. And, it is what it is. And, all four wheels fell off of the car while I was driving, but it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's just like, dude.
Sounds about right.
It just seems, which is great. It's also great at the same time, like legitimately, it's cool to see somebody kind of chill out. Hi, what do you, she just want to make an appearance. She's saying hi. It's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? We talking? It's just funny to see him kind of zenned out. It's just, he's got a wife and he's got a kid. I listened to an interview of his last season during last season on Beyond the Grid, where I think Tom Clarkson talked to him for about an hour, and he just kind of talked about his overall philosophy and his place he is right now. And I think he's just in a peaceful place, which is fantastic. It's great. Like, as a human being, objectively, that's a great place to be. Competitively, however, I don't know if that puts you at the greatest advantage, especially going up against these kids that are just starving for some sort of accolade, championship, stuff like that. And I think that, being in an Aston Martin car, which might be, technically on its back foot, is one thing, but also being a driver that's a little bit older, with a little bit more perspective overall, but like a little less hungry because of that, is gonna keep you kind of where he is right now. And I don't know if we're gonna see any results from him at all. And this might be another 2020 for him.
His hunger really went from competing from championships to competing for a win every 4 races to competing for a podium, possibly. What was it? Was it Hockenheim? That was the race where everybody said that was the downfall of Vettel, when he was like leading the race and binned it. What was that race? You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do. I know the moment. I don't know if it was Hockenheim or not. It might have been, but it was definitely like late 2019.
Yeah.
Right?
But you can see his hunger is, which is so sad to see. His hunger is just gone. Right. It just appears to be gone. He doesn't seem to be the fiery, the mega quick Sebastian Vettel that we used to see. And that's sad to see, first of all, because Sebastian Vettel is actual treasure to the sport. But it's just really unfortunate to see. And I think he didn't anticipate that Aston Martin wasn't going to be able to copy the Mercedes this season. Because that's why he went there. Don't lie either. I mean, anybody wanted to go to Racing Point last season. Yeah. After seeing what they were suddenly pulling out of the bag and saying, "Oh yeah, we've got a competitive car now," huh?
Which, by the way, it seems like such a silly thing to I mean, of course, you got a Mercedes engine. Why wouldn't you copy the top Mercedes car? And it's like, and the FI was even like, yeah, they didn't break any rules, but we're going to give them 50. Well, okay, well, hold on. If they didn't break any rules, why are you penalizing them? Why did they have to lose 15 points? So that was silly, man. I didn't like it at all. And I'm not even that much of an Otmar fan. He kind of bugs me. And Lawrence Stroll, he's a billionaire. I don't have opinions on billionaires. They live in a different universe. So I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, they exist. I'm not one of those people that's like, hate billionaires. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. They don't know I exist. So I don't give a shit. But as far as how the team was ran and stuff like that, I don't know. It just seemed like a silly thing to go on about. I think it was just a lot of politics. I think, especially, probably Zach Brown probably led that charge where it's like, hey, we should probably turn him in. And it was like, well, wouldn't you do the same thing if you?
Yeah, exactly. That's what you're doing this season.
Yeah, let's not. It's So that's a whole other discussion because it's like, yeah, man, you got 10 teams that are trying to find any edge they possibly can. Yeah. You think they're not going to do that? Like, exactly. What's going on?
You got to push the envelope somewhere.
Yeah. But I guess that also has just come back to haunt them this year because they just seem to be running into trouble after trouble with this Aston Martin car.
Yeah, which is super. I mean, Racing Point has never been the fan favorite team by any means. But I got to say, it was kind of fun seeing them up there competing last season. It was fun seeing them up there in the top 5, top 3 at points. That was fun to see. It was great get new faces into the podium every once in a while instead of the every weekend Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas situation.
Yeah,
it was really nice to see that, and I think that it was also partial. I think it was fun for Stroll as well because he could finally say, "It's just not my father's money anymore. I can actually drive a car a little bit." But that's just not the case this season, and that fall from grace has really just taken a toll. Yeah,
it definitely has. Real quick, and then we'll talk about Midwest F1 for a little bit. The Bottas, George Russell tiff.
Oh yeah.
Was hilarious. It was funny to me. It was like seeing George Russell mad. First of all, George Russell, you're still not intimidating. You're like the least intimidating guy I've ever seen.
You can't look at George Russell and say he's some intimidating figure just because he's tall. Like, he's not.
Yeah. Just not an intimidating figure at all. And then like storming over to Bottas's car and then like kind of like bopped him on. He gave him a head bop. It wasn't like a it wasn't like a punch. It was just like he bopped him on the head, and I thought he was just like, "Hey man, are you okay? Glad you're okay." And like
that's what I thought as well. That when I looked at it originally, I looked at it and I said, because I was watching. Obviously, this is like 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday.
Yeah,
you look at it and you're saying, "Oh, this probably isn't anything bad." Then you look back after and you say, "Oh wow, that was a lot more heated than I actually thought it was." That's interesting. Yeah, no, that whole situation was a complete and total mess. I don't know, man. It was rough.
Bottas flipped him off, man. Bottas he just like flipped him off from the halo, from under the. And it was just such a funny thing to see, man. I think what's to be said about that everybody else hasn't already said, but it was just from my point of view, it was just funny seeing George Russell be like, I'm going to storm up to this car. I was like, hey man, you're like 50 pounds. It's okay. Like your helmet, you look like your helmet's going to make you tip over whenever you walk. So like,
exactly.
Maybe just take it. It's fine, man. Just chill out for a little bit. It's okay.
I don't know what's more funny, George Russell and Valtteri Bottas getting mad at each other, or the fact that a Williams was competing with a Mercedes.
Yeah, it was.
That was crazy. That was weird. And because we obviously had George Russell last season as well. That he was looking really good. They come to Imola this season, and both Willies go into Q2. I'm like, hold on a minute, something's not right here. What's what exactly is happening? And then it was unfortunate that Latifi had to be taken out by Mazepin because I think he was actually going to have a decent race as well. He was going to finish at least,
and like his first decent race ever, really. Because he hasn't really had that much, and both of them got out of Q1.
Yeah, they got into Q2. Yeah, I think Russell wasn't that far away either. I'll tell you what.
No, and both of them got into Q1. I think that was the first time Latifi's got out of Q1, right?
Yeah, something like that. That sounds about right.
Yeah, if he has before, it's only one or two other times. So that was fun to see. I think their wheelbase is shorter this year. They look like they have a smaller car than last year. Did you get that opinion? Did you get that impression too? Anytime I see a T-cam view of the Williams now, I don't know if this is the new paint job, which I happen to like. I like.
Yeah,
it's
not terrible. Williams. I don't know why people hate it on it. It's not the one by any.
It looks like it's an Allegiant Airlines plane that flies out of Sarasota, Florida, but it's a good color scheme. It kind of harkens back to the Nigel Mansell era, but it just looks like a smaller. I don't know if the halo. I don't know if it's because the Halo has a smaller profile or something. It just kind of looks a little smaller.
Looks weird,
and maybe a little racier. And I'd have to look up the measurements, but that's just kind of the impression I get. I'm like, oh, this. They kind of put some improvements into this.
I'm still put off by that steering wheel. If I'm honest, I don't know how
you don't like the steering.
I don't know how anybody drives with that.
I love it.
I was in the game. I was in F1 2020, and my career mode. I went into the Williams, and I'm looking at it. I was like, how does anybody see? You've got half the steering wheel covering the screen. How do you? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me.
So I guess the two schools of thought are put the steering wheel in the wheel, or put the display in the wheel rather, or put the screen right there on the car so it doesn't rotate around. So I don't know, man. I think it just comes down to how the car handles, but I don't know. It seems fun to me. It seems simple. It seems like pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I think looking at the wheel, it gives more buttons. It gives your thumbs access to more buttons. I don't know, something like that. It just kind of looks like it may have some ergonomic advantage, but I don't know. It looks pretty cool to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still not used to it. I can see what he's thinking behind it with the with having the force distribution or whatever the reason is behind having the display on the dash like that. I can see his thinking behind that, but I'm like, is it really that much of a difference? Like, is it worth it? But no, speaking of the Williams, I'm really happy to see them actually. Like, I really hope they have a good season. I think honestly, with the new owners, hopefully they have a lot more investment. I was really also hoping for Alfa Romeo to kind of pull together some results this season. I don't think that's going to happen from initially looking at it, but so hopefully Williams can make the jump into maybe 8th at best. Hopefully, I see him with a few. I see Alfa Romeo with a few more points this season, definitely. Yeah.
I think they should have made a driver change or two. I don't know. Antonio Giovinazzi, I've said this on the previous episode. He just, I don't know. He's just there.
Yeah, he's not there yet. He needs, because he's quick at times as well. I don't want to see a driver get thrown out of a car, even though he's quick type thing. But consistency is the name of the game. We saw that with Alex Albon. We saw that with Pierre Gasly when he was at Red Bull. You need to have consistency in order to make it in the sport. And I think that Giovinazzi just hasn't had that yet. He can't.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah, you really do. I don't understand the logistics, and obviously the people that run the actual Formula One team have their reasons that are probably better than mine, but who am I to say? But I just don't see the reason to not, keep Raikkonen and put somebody like a Robert Schwartzman in there to see, just to give him a go. He definitely seems ready. Ferrari Academy's got a couple of drivers they could have put in there. But it's like Giovinazzi, I don't know if he earned his spot. It's not like he earned his spot last year. That it's just not remarkable to me, but we'll see. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. Midwest F1. A league that we're both a part of. You are known as Hotspot. I just take my initials and add AIN on the end of it. So I don't have I'm always jealous of people who have cool like usernames. I can never think of a cool username. I just put my name on it and like morph my name. But we just ended the second season, on to our third next week. And man, it's just a fun place to be. It's cool. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, you do a great job with the commentaries and stuff like that. You don't drive a lot. You drive in the F2 series though, right?
Yeah, I drive in F2, and the reason behind that is how my schedule works. Because I'm so close to home as well, I kind of transition. I spend kind of the weekends there, and also because the fact that all the divisions race on Thursday, where I have to commentate. Had those be spread out, if they were spread out, I probably would find myself in Div 4 where I rightfully belong.
There. Man, yeah, they are at the same time. That's cool. You do a great job commentating though. It's cool. And then also you drive in the F2 series, which is it's fun. It's a different car to drive on that game. It's the gearboxes are a little slower. It's tougher. I do too. I love it. I perform a little better in the F2 series than I do the F1. It's just it's a different experience. I'm definitely excited to see how that translates to a wheel, how that translates to like a sim setup. I want to get one of those pretty soon. Yeah. Oh, dude, I got to go in for one of those pretty soon. I just tried to start using
lower traction control and controller. I got to tell you, man, it's kind of rough. I'm not sure
first.
That's what I'm working on. The amount of I tried. This is my thinking. If I just try to do it in career mode first and get a feel for it, then eventually it'll translate. But
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a transition to make. But yeah, no, I like the F2. It's just simplified. I guess it's racing.
It is. Yeah.
It makes more sense to me that you don't have to worry about, what fuel mode am I going into? You don't have to worry about, how am I managing my overtake button? It's simplified. It's simple. It's perfect. It's racing. It's how I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or speaking in British accents while you're racing,
Absolutely.
Things like that. Yeah. You got to stay authentic to the sport. It is, man. It really is. You don't have to worry about it as much. I find it appealing that way too. And there, I don't know, there's just it's just kind of a pure experience, than the other. You don't have a lot of electronic components going into it and stuff like that. But it's fun, dude. They just turn like yachts. It just feels like you're turning a yacht. Like when you're trying to turn,
it's kind of ridiculous.
You're just trying to turn an F2 car. You're just like, okay, well, this is going to turn. Okay. All right. We're still turning. And like 5 seconds later, you're like, all right, well, still in this corner. We'll just keep going.
That's about how it goes as well. That it's at that point where you need to make the decision. Well, I need to crank out as much straight line speed as I can out of this car.
Yeah.
However, the understeer is going to hurt like it never has before. Because with the F1 cars, you're like, I've got a little bit of understeer, I can still manage that. It's not that bad. If you have understeer in F2, you don't realize how far up the circuit you're actually sliding until you're in the gravel. It's ridiculous. It's
until you're in the wall. You're just like, the wall's right here. You're just like, all right, well, I think I broke a little too late.
Yeah,
I think
a little bit.
I think my race is a little done.
That's the thing. You can't like brake. You can't like late brake at all unless you've got all the assists off and you're actually got a proper sim set up. But
you really can't. I just steal Jacko's setups, although I just steal his.
Oh yeah, you do that too. I'm joking, I don't do that, but I can't blame you.
No, I just steal his stuff all the time, and it just feels great. I just try that. I just try to, like, I'll go to the top. Basically, I just try to friend as many people as I can in the league, so that I can see their times in the timesheets for the time trial. And then I'll just go through the top 10 and just see if I find a setup that works. And his 10 times out of 10 just always feel awesome. I don't know. I guess we may have similar driving styles perhaps, or something like that, but I don't know what it is, but they always just feel great. And the cool thing about this game, especially on PlayStation 4, probably even more on PlayStation 5, which I can't wait to get a new system for the new game, is the haptic feedback that you get while you're driving, and everything's based on the haptic feedback. And so you get feedback from your throttle, you get feedback from your steering, and you kind of have to feel your way through these tracks. But then once you lock into a rhythm, you're just like, oh, this is when I'm gaining time, and making huge games. And I don't know, the feedback and the touch, the tactile experience to it is something you don't get a lot with other racing games either. It's so, it'll be fun to see if that translates to like a sim rig or something like that, because I want to know if you're able to get the same kind of feedback when you're on the throttle with pedals and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to trying it out.
Absolutely. And that's one of the best things I feel about this game is just when you're in time trials and you're by yourself and you have a slow lap, you can actually pinpoint out and go, okay, I have lost time in this corner, in this 10 yards or whatever. You can actually feel where you're losing time. Back in my old days of playing NASCAR Heat, when I used to do that, I used to do that. Not anymore. I still have Heat 3. I'd never play it though, but I would be turning laps and I'd just be like, why am I still 0.5 of a second behind everyone? I'm hitting the line absolutely perfectly. There's nothing better I can do. And you get into F1, you're like, it's so intricate. You can actually feel the difference of when you're having a good lap versus a poor lap. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you really can. You just try not to fight the car the whole time and just try to slip into, there's like slip angles with these corners where you hit it and you just, all of a sudden you're up 4 or 5 tenths. And you're like, oh, I don't know what I just did, but I guess I just turned at the right spot. Lately I've just been working on not braking so early. And so I brake maybe 5 meters later than I usually do. All of a sudden I'm picking up 5 tenths on each track. And I'm like, holy shit, what's going on? So it's those little things over time where you kind of pick up like that. And it makes for a really fun experience. I want the next game. I hope the next game, especially with Codemasters getting help from EA and things like that. I want this next game to have upgraded AI systems. I really want them to.
I want the damage engine. Both of those departments have to get better. But I tell you what, it's got a really good foundation now. I can't wait to see what they're going to put into it now. Next game.
Yeah. Damage the back wing. I want to see back wing damage. I want to see damage for every part of the car. floor damage.
And not just the cosmetic stuff as well. Not just, oh, you got a little scrape going on there. No, I want to see actual stuff happening with it.
Yeah, I want to see pieces of carbon fiber flying into the back car and lodging into their helmets.
I want to see the wheel hops. That is the biggest complaint I have with this game. Because if you get a wheel hop in real F1, you're tumbling down the straight 5 times. This game, you kind of just sit there and it doesn't happen. I wish they could put that in because that is like a big
What do you mean by a wheel hop?
Wheel on wheel. When it goes, you're along somebody, your wheel hits their wheel, and you kind of get yeet over it type thing.
Oh yeah. Or like when one wheel just kind of goes over the other car somehow, stuff like that.
That's exactly.
Yeah, like the Leclerc's Vettel Austria last year, that whole deal.
Yes.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, let's definitely see more of those. There should be, stuff like that. But yeah, man, I gotta find a PlayStation 5. I don't know where to get one. Maybe the black market.
Yeah, good luck with that. They haven't. I mean, they're really not releasing those fast enough to actually make me want to get one. So
it's pretty crazy. Maybe I could just go to. I'm down here in Texas. Maybe I could go to Mexico, see if I can bargain for one.
Not a bad idea.
Work the streets of Mexico for a week and get a PlayStation 5. It'd be worth it.
Yeah, so absolutely. I could do it.
All right, man. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Where are we at? 56 minutes. Yeah. So
pretty good.
Yeah, man. Not too bad. Thanks for joining me on this.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man. And as always, you do a great job in Midwest F1. Shout out to Midwest F1 and all our champions from last season. I know it was Jacko and then Mystic Joker, I believe, right? Division 1 and Division 2.
Div 2 was Sadistic.
Sadistic King. I'm sorry. So I don't have it in front of me. Poor show prep, I guess. But yeah, so shout out to all of our, and then Soy Loco, Division 3. Right?
I'm going to be honest with you. I feel bad about how little I've paid attention to Div 3 and 4. And it's not a knock on those guys whatsoever, but I have been so involved with Division 2 and F2 that I've just had no wanting to get involved with anything else at this point. I didn't even know. This is how bad it's been. Remember Honda, how he kind of just left in the middle of the season. I was talking to JC around that same time happened. I was like, well, is this guy like really that good? And then he pulls up the chart of who's won races. He's won all of them but 2, and the only 2 that lost was ones that he didn't finish in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so it was kind of crazy. That's how little I've been paying attention, unfortunately, to these other divisions. But the good news is that this next season that's coming up, there is a fair bit of people that have raced in Div 2 in the previous season that I know that is going to be in Div 1. So that's going to be really fun to see.
Yeah. I've spent, technically I was a Div 2 driver most of the season. I started in Div 3. Moved up to Div 2, but also subbed some in Div 1. So I only, out of all these races last season, I only finished like 5 Div 2 races. And so it was a weird season where I kind of hopped around, and I know that there are going to be drivers from Div 3 last year in Div 2 this season, in which I stayed because I didn't want to move up just yet. I kind of just want to see where I'm at with Div 2 at the end of this season, who I'm definitely scared of. I'm like, oh, you're from Div 3, you're faster than me, definitely. So it's going to be super competitive. I'm looking forward to it. And I don't know. I'm just going to try. Dude, my objective is just finish every race, don't DNF, and stay out of the penalties, and stay consistent on strategy, and just see where that gets me. Because that is, you start finishing races, and you're 20 seconds of penalties every single time. Not that I'm 20 seconds every time, but they add up really quick, and you're just if I wasn't in the penalties this much, I'd be 3-4 spots higher on the results and stuff like that. So yeah, man, just keep the expectations just right there. They're just under promise, over deliver. We'll see what happens, but I'm pretty excited for it. It's gonna be fun.
Oh, me too. I'm so excited for it. We have actually tonight, now that I think of it, we've got the Div 2 showcase going on that me and Monkey kind of put together. I was going to stream it on the league's Twitch, but nobody responded to it in the planning Discord. So I'll probably just do that on my own channel. And why not? Because they got to use it tomorrow, and I'm not sure when Crash is actually around to mess with all of his accounts and whatnot. And that's kind of the reason why I've kind of been hesitant to use that, because I used it in the past and I've had to be on the phone with Crash, be like, okay, what exactly am I doing here? That's kind of how that's been. But I mean, if it's if I check back in today in the planning Discord, and some people agree to that, then yeah, might be able to.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Midwest F1. What is it's a Midwest F1 League on Twitch? What's the Twitch handle there?
I should know this off the
top of my head.
I don't stream the Twitch, so I honestly don't.
Look up the Twitch handle, and I will sing to the camera.
I should know this off the top of my head. I don't.
While you look up
that's exactly what it is. It's just
Midwest F1. Midwest F1 on Twitch.
No anything. That's exactly.
MWAE Daltonian on Twitch as well if you want to tune in. Josh, thank you so much for joining me. And we will see you after Portimao in 2 weeks. This has been the Slipstream Podcast. Find us on Twitter at The Slipcast and email us at slipstreampodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, everyone, keep pushing.